The badge reader accepts his card on the first try. The light turns green without hesitation. He notices because yesterday it did not. The lobby is unchanged, polished stone, indirect lighting calibrated to look like daylight without committing to it, the low, deliberate hum of air moving through vents that are never visible. Screens on the wall rotate through internal metrics, growth percentages, market expansion maps, slogans about alignment and resilience. No faces. No names. He steps inside and waits for the elevator, standing slightly to the side so he does not block anyone important. He has learned where to stand. It is not written anywhere, but the pattern is obvious. When the doors open, he joins 3 others. No one speaks. They all face forward, as if sound might be recorded. The ascent is smooth. Floors pass silently. On level 22, one of them exits. On 26, another. He remains alone for the last stretch. The executive floors begin above 28, though the numbering skips irregularly. He has never asked why. At 31, the elevator stops. The doors open onto glass and carpet and a silence that feels engineered. He steps out, nods to the receptionist, who knows his face but not his name, and walks toward his desk. The office is already awake. Screens glow. Coffee machines hiss softly. Conversations occur at a volume carefully chosen to imply productivity without intimacy. He places his bag under the desk, sits, wakes his computer. An unread notification blinks. It is a calendar alert, an automated reminder for the weekly operations sync. He clicks it out of habit, not interest. The meeting list loads. 5 names. Yesterday, there were 6. He pauses, cursor hovering, waiting for the system to correct itself. It does not. He scrolls. Checks the previous weeks. The same pattern repeats, cleanly retroactive. As if the missing name was never there. He searches the directory. No result. He opens yesterday's email thread, the one where attachments were shared and deadlines assigned. He remembers the missing person replying late, apologizing for the delay, using too many words. The thread loads. The messages remain. But the sender name is gone. Where the name should be, there is now only a role description, former contributor. He does not remember seeing that designation before. Across the aisle, chairs shift. Someone laughs softly at something on their screen. Phones vibrate. The office continues without adjustment. He stands and walks toward the glass conference room where the meeting will take place. Inside, the table is already arranged. Water bottles aligned. Notepad centered. The large display shows the company logo, idle but attentive. People file in. No one mentions the empty chair. He waits. Watches faces as they settle into familiar positions. The manager opens their laptop. An assistant enters briefly to adjust the blinds, reducing glare, increasing privacy. The meeting begins on time. Agenda items move forward. Numbers are discussed. Risks are reframed as opportunities. A deliverable is reassigned without comment. He notices the reassignment because it belonged to the missing person. The manager does not look up when making the change. Someone asks a clarifying question. It is answered precisely, without context. No one asks where the work came from. No one asks where the person went. The meeting ends early. As people leave, he lingers, hoping someone will say something in the doorway, a casual acknowledgement, a shared confusion. Nothing happens. Back at his desk, he opens the internal messaging tool. He types the missing person's name carefully, spelling it exactly as it used to appear. The system suggests nothing. He deletes the text. A few minutes later, an email arrives from operations. Subject line, minor team update. The message is brief. It thanks everyone for their flexibility. It notes that certain responsibilities have been realigned. It encourages focus on forward momentum. It ends with a reminder about confidentiality and professionalism. There is no signature, only a department name. He reads it twice, looking for subtext. There is none. At lunch, he sits with colleagues in the common area. The windows overlook the city, but the glass is treated to mute the view, as if distance improves concentration. Someone mentions workload. Another jokes about the calendar being too full. A third asks if anyone has heard back from legal on a separate issue. No one mentions the missing person. He considers bringing it up, framing it as logistical. Do we know who's covering their accounts? But the question forms slowly, as if encountering resistance before reaching his mouth. He does not ask. Later in the afternoon, he passes HR. The door is open. Inside, a representative speaks softly to someone seated with their back to the hallway. The tone is gentle, rehearsed. The words are indistinct, but the rhythm is familiar. He keeps walking. By evening, the office thins out. Lights dim automatically in unused sections. Cleaning staff move quietly, efficient and unnoticed. Before leaving, he checks his email one last time. There is a new calendar invite for tomorrow morning. Mandatory attendance. Small group. The subject line reads, Follow-up, alignment. Attached is a single document. No description. He clicks it. The file opens slowly. At the top, in neutral font, is a phrase he has seen before but never connected to himself. Standard confidentiality acknowledgement. His name is already filled in. The document remains open on his screen longer than necessary. He does not read it immediately. Instead, he notices how complete it already is. His full legal name. His employee ID. The correct date. A version number in the footer that suggests revisions, though none are visible. He scrolls. The language is smooth, almost courteous. It refers to ongoing business operations, confidential matters, and the mutual benefit of discretion. Nothing specific. Nothing that could be questioned without sounding naive. He closes the file without signing. The next morning, the office feels marginally different, though nothing has changed. The lights turn on at the same time. The coffee tastes the same. The security gate accepts his badge again. Still, he walks more carefully. The mandatory meeting takes place in a smaller conference room, one without a view. The glass is opaque from the inside, translucent from the outside, a design choice meant to suggest openness while preventing observation. 3 people are already seated when he enters. A manager from operations. Someone from HR he has seen before but never spoken to. A legal representative whose title he does not recognize. They greet him politely. They use his name correctly. The door closes on its own. The manager begins by thanking him for his time. HR nods, hands folded. Legal opens a folder but does not remove anything from it. They explain that the company is going through adjustments. That this is normal at their scale. That flexibility is valued. That clarity will come later. He waits for the missing name to appear in the conversation. It does not. Instead, they talk about workflow continuity. About minimizing disruption. About how important it is that teams feel supported during periods of change. HR asks how he is feeling. The question is delivered with sincerity, but without expectation. He answers correctly, he says he's fine. Legal mentions the document. Refers to it as standard. Emphasizes that it protects everyone involved. The company. The employees. The process. He asks, carefully, whether this is related to the colleague who stopped appearing. There is a pause. Not long, but deliberate. The manager smiles slightly and says the phrase he will hear again later, in other contexts, from other mouths. They're no longer with us. HR adds that transitions can be complex. Legal clarifies that personnel matters are confidential by nature. No one contradicts anyone else. He nods, because nodding seems expected. They move on to practicalities. Some responsibilities will shift temporarily. He is trusted. His discretion is appreciated. There may be opportunities for growth. The meeting ends with reassurance. As he leaves, HR reminds him that their door is always open. Legal reminds him to review the document at his convenience. The manager reminds him that this conversation was informal. None of them ask him to sign. Back at his desk, he notices that the missing person's name has vanished from shared drives. Folder structures reconfigure silently, files reattributed, ownership fields updated to reflect the company itself. It is efficient. Clean. By mid-afternoon, the normalization accelerates. A team-wide email announces a streamlined reporting structure. No names mentioned. No explanations offered. People reply with thumbs-up reactions and brief acknowledgments of receipt. A Slack channel is archived. He does not remember when it was created, only that the missing person used to post there often, late at night. He searches his own messages. Entire conversations are gone. Not deleted. Simply absent. At lunch, someone finally alludes to it. Not directly. They mention how fast things move here. How you have to stay adaptable. How asking too many questions early in your career can limit perception. The words are casual, almost friendly. He realizes then that no one is confused. They understand the rules. In the afternoon, his calendar updates again. A meeting disappears. No cancellation notice. No explanation. Just an empty block of time where something used to be. He fills it with work. Before leaving, he opens the confidentiality document once more. This time he reads more carefully. One clause stands out, not because it is aggressive, but because it is generous. A sentence offering consideration in exchange for compliance. Framed as support. Positioned as optional. A number is referenced, though not yet specified. He closes the file again. As he shuts down his computer, a new email arrives. No subject line. Sent from an internal address that does not accept replies. Inside is a single sentence. We'll follow up with details. The follow-up arrives before the details. The next morning, his badge hesitates. Not enough to fail, just long enough for him to notice the delay. The light flickers from red to green, as if reconsidering. He steps through when it allows him to, aware that the system has become capable of judgment. At his desk, the inbox is already populated. Overnight emails sorted by priority, flagged automatically. None appear urgent. One is marked for awareness. It is from HR. The message thanks him again for his flexibility. It confirms that certain conversations from the previous day should be understood as part of a broader realignment initiative. It reiterates that confidentiality protects everyone involved. A line at the end invites him to reach out with any concerns, followed by a link to internal resources. He does not click it. Mid-morning, he is invited to observe a meeting he does not usually attend. The invite lists him as optional, but attendance is implied by the way his manager mentions it in passing. The room is larger than necessary. The chairs are spaced to avoid intimacy. On the wall, a slide deck displays updated org charts. The missing person's role has been absorbed. No vacancy remains. Someone presents the change as efficiency. Another frames it as resilience. The language is consistent, practiced, interchangeable. He notices that no one says the word removed. Questions are invited at the end. A silence follows. Then someone asks about timelines. Someone else asks about deliverables. The meeting ends with alignment. Afterward, in the hallway, he overhears a fragment of conversation. Handled appropriately. Clean transition. No risk exposure. The words float past him, unattached to speakers, like annotations on invisible documents. At lunch, he sits alone. Across the room, a group laughs. He watches them, waiting for the laugh to turn into something else, an edge, a signal, but it does not. They are relaxed. Unburdened. He wonders when they stopped noticing. In the afternoon, legal sends the details. This time the email has a subject line, administrative matter. The message is short. Polite. It explains that due to his proximity to certain sensitive operational knowledge, the company is offering a supplemental agreement. Attached is a revised confidentiality document and a separate file labeled consideration schedule. He opens the second file first. The number is larger than expected. Not life-changing. But large enough to require explanation. It is framed as a one-time acknowledgement of professionalism. A recognition of trust. A proactive measure to avoid misunderstandings. No obligations are listed beyond silence. No end date is specified. He scrolls for conditions. There are none that look like conditions. Only assurances. The revised document is longer. More precise. It references restructuring, reputational integrity, and the non-disclosure of interpretations, as well as facts. There is a section about remedies. He reads it twice. At the bottom, there is a signature field. His manager stops by near the end of the day. Stands at his desk instead of sitting. Mentions that these things can feel strange at first. That it's important not to overthink them. That the company values loyalty, but understands pragmatism. He nods again. The manager lowers their voice slightly and adds that the offer is time-sensitive, purely for administrative reasons. That delays can complicate things. As the manager leaves, he notices something new on his screen. A calendar invite, already accepted on his behalf. Tomorrow morning. Short duration. Title, Final Alignment. The location is listed only as conference room. No floor number. No attendees visible. He looks at the invitation settings. The option to decline is disabled. The conference room is smaller than the others. No glass walls. No external light. The table is narrow, just wide enough to prevent comfort. A speakerphone sits in the center, powered on, its indicator steady and unblinking. He arrives early. The room smells faintly of disinfectant and something sweeter underneath, like a deliberate attempt to soften sterility. On the wall hangs a framed statement about company values. The font is modern. The language abstract. 2 chairs are already occupied when he enters. HR sits to the left. Legal to the right. No manager this time. They greet him as if resuming a conversation that never ended. HR asks if he'd like water. Legal slides a folder onto the table, unopened. The door closes. HR begins by acknowledging the difficulty of change. Mentions that transitions can surface uncertainty. That it's natural to seek clarity. Legal follows by clarifying that clarity and disclosure are not the same thing. They explain that the company operates in a complex environment. That discretion is not secrecy, but professionalism. That narratives can form unintentionally when information is incomplete. HR nods along. They emphasize care. Support. Stability. He asks, more directly this time, whether the missing colleague left voluntarily. HR answers first. They're no longer employed here. Legal adds that the circumstances are not relevant to current operations. He presses once more, careful to keep his tone neutral. There is another pause. Longer than before. Legal opens the folder. Inside are printed documents he has already seen digitally. Tabs mark sections. One tab is labeled Acknowledgement. Another is labeled Separation Context. Legal does not open that section. Instead, they explain that the company has obligations to shareholders, partners, regulators. That certain situations require containment rather than explanation. HR says containment protects people. Legal says it protects the business. No one says they are the same thing. They move to the NDA. This time, it is described as a safeguard. A boundary. A way to ensure that speculation does not become liability. HR reframes it as peace of mind. Legal reframes it as finality. They slide the document closer to him. He notices that his signature field is highlighted. He asks what happens if he does not sign. HR answers gently. Legal answers precisely. They explain that refusal would signal misalignment. That misalignment complicates trust. That trust is foundational to continued collaboration. They do not threaten. They do not promise. HR mentions alternative paths. Internal mobility. External support. Outplacement resources, if necessary. Legal mentions that the consideration offer is contingent on timely execution. He asks how long he has. Legal checks the time. End of day. HR smiles apologetically, as if time itself were at fault. They speak about the missing colleague again, but only in abstractions. About how situations resolve. About how people move on. About how the company remains. He realizes then that no one will ever say what happened. Not here. Not officially. The meeting ends without a conclusion. As he stands to leave, HR reminds him again that their door is always open. Legal reminds him that the offer expires quietly. In the hallway, his phone vibrates. A notification from payroll. A pending transaction, pre-approved. The amount matches the consideration schedule. No explanation attached. No action required. He understands, suddenly, that the money has arrived before his decision. And that the company has already assumed his answer. The transaction posts before lunch. It appears in his account as a neutral entry, labeled with an internal code he does not recognize. There is no accompanying message. No explanation. Just confirmation that the funds are available. He does not touch them. At his desk, the NDA sits open again. The highlighted signature field seems brighter than before, though nothing has changed. The cursor blinks steadily, patient. He notices how the language has shifted since the first version. Not in tone, but in certainty. The clauses no longer describe potential outcomes. They assume completion. One section refers to prior conversations. Another references materials already provided. There is a paragraph describing cooperation as voluntary, followed by several pages detailing the consequences of deviation. He scrolls back up. The document does not ask him to agree with the company's account. It does not require belief. Only non-interference. Silence, framed as neutrality. Around him, the office continues to function. A new hire is introduced on a team-wide call. Their background is blurred. Their enthusiasm is visible but contained. People welcome them in the chat with standardized messages and emoji reactions. The missing colleague's former projects are now owned by operations. Ownership, he realizes, has become abstract. Midday, HR sends another message. Shorter this time. They check in. Ask whether he has questions. Reiterate support. Include a link to wellness resources. The tone is warmer than before. He wonders whether warmth is meant to compensate for something else. Later, legal follows up. Their message is colder. Efficient. It notes that the consideration has been processed, in anticipation of alignment. It reminds him of the deadline. It offers to clarify any contractual language. Not the situation. Just the language. He drafts a reply to HR, deletes it. Drafts one to legal. Deletes that too. Every question he considers seems to expand instead of resolve. Each would require another, more explicit one. He understands now how curiosity accumulates cost. In the afternoon, a meeting room near his desk remains occupied longer than scheduled. The blinds are closed. Voices do not carry. When the door opens briefly, he sees a familiar face inside, someone senior, someone careful. They avoid eye contact as they pass him. By late afternoon, the normalization is complete. A system notification informs him that access permissions have been updated. He retains what he needs. Loses what he does not. The change is framed as optimization. He tests a folder he used to open freely. Access denied. No explanation. No appeal link. Just a message stating that permissions are managed centrally. As the day winds down, his manager stops by again. This time they sit. They do not mention the missing colleague. They talk about trajectory. About how trust compounds over time. About how the company remembers who helps things move forward. They mention, casually, that situations like this are why leadership compensation looks the way it does. Risk. Responsibility. Exposure. He understands the implication: money is not payment. It is insulation. Before leaving, the manager says one more thing, almost as an aside. That document, think of it as closure. At 6:47 p.m. a reminder pops up. Asterisk signature requested. Asterisk. The system has auto-filled everything again. All that remains is his name. As he stares at the screen, he realizes something that settles heavily and precisely. Nothing he signs will explain what happened. But refusing to sign will ensure that something happens to him. The cursor continues to blink. Waiting. The tablet does not react to hesitation. Its screen remains unchanged, bright but subdued, calibrated to be readable without demanding attention. The signature field waits with institutional patience, as if time itself has been outsourced. He notices there is no chair. The absence feels intentional. Standing keeps the body alert. Prevents settling. Encourages completion. He does not touch the screen. Instead, he looks around the room. There are no windows. No wall art. Only a clock without numbers, its hands thin and quiet. He cannot tell whether it is accurate. After a moment, the door opens. Legal enters first, carrying nothing. HR follows, holding a folder so slim it might be empty. They do not sit either. They position themselves at opposite ends of the table, framing the tablet without blocking it. No one speaks immediately. The silence is not awkward. It is procedural. Legal gestures, lightly, toward the screen. HR says his name. Not as a prompt. As a reminder. They explain that this is simply the final step. That everything else has already been resolved. That lingering uncertainty benefits no one. Legal mentions that the company prefers clean conclusions. That ambiguity creates risk. That risk attracts attention. HR reframes it again. They say this is about closure. About protecting everyone from unnecessary stress. About allowing people to move forward without carrying what does not belong to them. He asks what happens if he walks out. Legal answers calmly. They say the offer will be withdrawn. That the funds will be reversed. That the agreement will be noted as declined. HR adds that declining does not imply wrongdoing. It simply indicates incompatibility. Legal adds that incompatibility has consequences. They do not list them. They do not need to. HR reminds him, gently, that curiosity can be misunderstood. That speculation travels faster than facts. That reputations are fragile in competitive environments. Legal reminds him that legal processes are slow, expensive, and rarely satisfying. Neither of them raises their voice. Neither of them rushes him. He realizes then that the company is not asking for obedience. It is offering an exit. Not from the company. From the situation. From the questions. From the cost of knowing. He thinks of the missing colleague again. Not of what happened to them, but of what did not happen afterward. No noise. No disruption. No visible damage. Just absence. He understands now that this is how disappearance works here. It is not forced. It is facilitated. The tablet emits a soft tone. A reminder. Legal mentions, almost casually, that delays sometimes trigger audits. Automated ones. Not personal. Just systems checking for anomalies. HR adds that audits can feel invasive, even when nothing is wrong. They look at him, waiting. He notices how complete the framework is. How every path has been prepared. How refusal has been rendered impractical without ever being labeled forbidden. The signature field pulses once. Subtle. He places his finger on the screen. The glass is warm. As he signs, he feels no release. No relief. Just the quiet recognition that the most frightening part was not the threat. It was the ease. When the signature is complete, the tablet locks. Legal nods. HR smiles. The document disappears. Legal confirms alignment. HR thanks him for his professionalism. They leave the room without ceremony. Alone again, he stands there longer than necessary. On the table, the tablet has gone dark. But something else has changed. As he exits the room, his phone vibrates. A new email. Subject line, *access update. *. Inside is a single sentence. Certain materials are now available to you. He opens the attachment. It is a folder. Inside are documents he has never seen before. And at the top of the list is a familiar name. The one that was supposed to be gone. He does not open the documents immediately. The folder sits on his screen like a test he has not agreed to take. File names line up in a precise order, dates, project codes, legal prefixes. The familiar name at the top appears unchanged. No disclaimer. No annotation. Just a person restored as data. He closes the folder. Around him, the office hums with end-of-day activity. Chairs roll back. Jackets are pulled on. Conversations resume at safe distances. Nothing in the environment acknowledges that he has crossed a threshold. He opens the folder again. This time he selects the first document. It is a timeline. Not of misconduct. Not of failure. Of exposure. Emails forwarded internally. Notes marked privileged. Calendar entries labeled context. A pattern emerges, not of wrongdoing, but of proximity. The missing colleague was present at the wrong conversations, CC'd on the wrong threads, included just long enough to see how decisions were shaped before language softened them. There are annotations in the margins. Legal language. Risk assessments. One line appears repeatedly, phrased slightly differently each time. Uncontrolled interpretation risk. He scrolls. There is no accusation. No justification. Only a progression from relevance to inconvenience. A quiet shift from asset to variable. He understands then that nothing needed to happen to them. Knowing was sufficient. A second document opens automatically. This one details remediation. Steps taken to ensure narrative consistency. Adjustments to access. Conversations redirected. A note confirming that all remaining parties have acknowledged standard confidentiality terms. His name appears near the end. Not as a subject. As a control. He leans back in his chair, careful not to make noise. Across the aisle, someone asks if he's joining for drinks. He declines with a practiced smile. The smile holds. The interaction passes. Back on the screen, a final document catches his attention. It is shorter. Less formal. An internal memo, never sent externally. It states that the situation has been resolved. That no further action is required. That the organization has demonstrated resilience. At the bottom is a line he has not seen before. Asterisk silence confirmed across all relevant parties. Asterisk. He realizes what access actually means. Not permission to speak. Permission to know. And with it, the burden of maintaining coherence. The fracture does not arrive as guilt or fear. It arrives as alignment. A subtle recalibration of instinct. He notices how easily his thoughts begin to reorganize, how quickly he starts framing events in the company's language. Risk. Exposure. Containment. He catches himself doing it. Stops. Tries to imagine telling someone outside the building what he has learned. Not the details, just the shape of it. The process. The quiet efficiency. He cannot find the words. Not because they are forbidden. Because they no longer seem usable. At 6:12 p.m. another email arrives. From HR. They check in. Again. They say they hope the additional context has been helpful. They remind him that support is ongoing. They attach a brief survey about the process. 5 questions. All multiple choice. None allow free text. He does not respond. As he shuts down his computer, he understands the final shift. The NDA did not silence him. It repositioned him. He is no longer someone who might ask what happened. He is now someone who knows why nothing was allowed to happen. And as he walks toward the elevator, badge ready, posture neutral, he realizes with sudden clarity. The company did not remove the missing colleague to protect itself from the truth. It removed them to prevent the truth from becoming contagious. The consequences do not arrive as punishment. They arrive as invitations. In the weeks that follow, his calendar fills more efficiently. Meetings appear with clearer objectives. Decisions reach him already framed, already justified. He is included earlier now, closer to the moment where language is chosen. He notices that fewer people ask him questions. Not because he is intimidating. Because he is assumed to understand. The missing colleague's name stops appearing entirely, even in the documents he was given. The folder updates quietly one morning. Files removed. Timelines shortened. The narrative compresses. Soon, only conclusions remain. HR checks in less frequently. When they do, it is casual. Friendly. As if the process has proven successful. Legal does not contact him at all. There is no need. At lunch, someone mentions restructuring again. This time with optimism. Someone else jokes about survivor bias, then laughs and corrects themselves, wrong word star. No one looks at him when they say it. He notices small changes in himself. He stops opening emails immediately. He reads subject lines more carefully. He edits messages twice, sometimes 3 times, to remove interpretations that could invite follow-up. He learns which phrases end conversations. This has been addressed. This aligns with guidance. This is outside scope. They work every time. One afternoon, a junior employee approaches him quietly. Asks a question about process. About why a document changed ownership overnight. The question is reasonable. Earnest. He feels the moment stretch. He could answer honestly. Not with details. Just with direction. Instead, he offers something safer. He says it's best to check with HR. The junior employee nods. Thanks him. Walks away. He feels nothing immediately. Later, he realizes that the answer came too easily. A week after that, the junior employee stops appearing in certain meetings. Their calendar thins. Their access adjusts. No announcement is made. No one mentions it. He understands now that silence is not passive. It is instructional. It teaches others how to behave by example, not enforcement. One evening, as he prepares to leave, he notices a new name added to a shared drive. Someone new. Someone eager. Their permissions mirror what the missing colleague once had. He watches the replication with detached clarity. The system does not learn from individuals. It replaces them. In the elevator, descending alone, he catches his reflection in the mirrored wall. He looks unchanged. Composed. Professional. Indistinguishable. For the first time, a question forms that does not feel dangerous, only inevitable. How many people like him are already here? How many are holding fragments of the same truth, sealed behind different agreements, each believing their silence is isolated? His phone vibrates as the doors open. A message from an internal address. No subject line. Inside is a single sentence. Thank you for modeling alignment. Attached is a brief note. An invitation. A promotion review. Scheduled for next week. As he steps out into the lobby, surrounded by polished stone and controlled light, he understands the final consequence of his choice. Silence does not just erase what happened. It rewards those who help make erasure sustainable. And he is no longer certain whether the next disappearance will belong to someone else. Or whether it will require him to participate directly. The promotion review is brief. Not celebratory. Not transactional. It unfolds with the same efficiency as everything else: measured praise, calibrated expectations, a modest adjustment to title and compensation that arrives already approved. No mention is made of the past months. No reference to alignment. The meeting ends with a handshake that feels symbolic only because it is unnecessary. Afterward, nothing changes outwardly. His desk remains where it is. His responsibilities expand without disruption. His badge continues to work. Doors open. Systems respond. The company moves forward as designed. The folder with the familiar name disappears one morning without notification. Not deleted, expired. Its absence leaves no gap. The documents it contained have been absorbed into summaries, then into conclusions, then into silence. Soon, there is nothing left to access. The colleague becomes unsearchable again. This time, permanently. He notices that the memory of them begins to soften. Not emotionally, structurally. Details blur. Edges dissolve. He remembers the shape of their presence more than their voice. This disturbs him more than fear ever did. In the weeks that follow, other small adjustments occur. Language tightens. Processes gain additional layers of review. Assistants control access with greater precision. Calendars show fewer open blocks. Executive floors remain unreachable, though no one says so aloud. HR circulates a new policy document. Legal updates definitions. The words transparency and accountability appear more often, each paired carefully with qualifiers. No one objects. He no longer expects explanations. Not because he distrusts them. Because he understands now that explanations are a cost center. One evening, as the office empties, he lingers by the window. The city below looks distant, curated by height and glass. Movement reduced to abstraction. He wonders what would happen if he spoke. Not internally. Not recklessly. Just somewhere that does not trade in alignment. He understands the answer immediately. Nothing dramatic. No confrontation. Just adjustments. Access recalibrated. Reputation reframed. A quiet repositioning until he becomes another administrative matter. Handled appropriately. He leaves the office and joins the flow of people exiting the building, contractors, assistants, executives, security. Each badge deactivates behind them for the night, identical in its temporary permission. At home, he reviews the agreement once more. Not out of doubt, but curiosity. The language remains intact. Timeless. It does not require ongoing consent. Only ongoing silence. He closes the file. In the final days of the quarter, a company-wide email announces record performance. Growth attributed to discipline. Focus. Strategic clarity. People react with enthusiasm. He reacts with restraint. Late that night, he realizes the last shift has already occurred. He no longer asks what happened. He no longer asks who decided. He asks only whether something is worth knowing. And whether knowing it would make him expensive. The company does not need his silence anymore. It has something more reliable. His understanding. And somewhere, buried beneath procedures and documentation and perfectly reasonable language, the truth remains, unchanged, intact, and inaccessible. Not because it was destroyed. But because everyone who could reach it learned, independently and efficiently, that it was better left alone.